Hi everyone, this is Paula at hugsbeads.com. I'm here in my bead studio this afternoon and I wanted to share with you a tutorial about how to do even count peyote stitch. So let's go down to the bead mat and I'll show you how to do this bead weaving stitch.
Okay, so let's get started making our even count peyote stitch. Now this is an important stitch to learn because you'll find it in a lot of bead weaving patterns, and it's one of the basic stitches that you need in your arsenal of bead weaving stitches, along with brick stitch and many others. So it's a good one to learn, and even count is the easiest one to learn first of all. So what you'll need is some beading thread. I use Fireline, and this is 6-pound Fireline, which is, I would say, adequate for most jobs, but you can go up to 8-pound if you wish. There's also other brands such as Wildfire, and I use this a lot too, 1G thread, which is also good for seed beads. Not so great for when you use crystals, because crystals can cut the thread and you need something strong and braided, and this Fireline fits the bill. So use whichever thread you like. We're going to thread the needle. I'm using a size 12 beading needle. It's very thin, and I find the easiest way to thread the needle is to use your fine nose pliers and just give it a little pinch on the end to flatten that thread. See how I did that? And then that should thread in nicely into the eye of the needle, just like so. And there, you've threaded your needle. Okay, so the next thing you need is a stop bead. It can be any random bead that you have laying around. It doesn't have to be a really big bead. It just needs to be able to stop the beads from falling off the thread. So I'm just using this random 11/0 black seed bead. I'm going to thread it to the bottom right thread. I'm going to leave a tail. I'd say about 3 to 4 inches is just fine. And then I'm going to go back up the same bead again, just to make sure there's a loop around that bead to secure it on the end. Okay, just like so. Okay, so now we're ready to thread on our beads. Now these are size 10 delicas. Now when you're doing peyote work, you can use 11/0 rounds, 10/0 rounds, whatever size rounds you want. But the best beads to use are the cylinder beads. These are delica beads, and I like using the delica beads for my peyote because it just makes such a more evenly tight weave, because they are cylinders and they sit next to each other perfectly rather than having the rounded bead lining up. So these are 10/0s. These are the bigger ones. Just for today's purpose of teaching you how to do the stitch, so you might see it a little easier. So these are delica beads, and they're glass seed beads, and I'm going to use 10 of these beads because we're doing an even count, as it's this the basic peyote stitches using even count. So I'm going to count on 10 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Okay, so we have our beads on our thread. I have them coming down to the end of the stop bead. There are 10 beads on here because we're doing even count. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up one bead, one delica bead, and I'm going to hold the beads like this with my finger, like that, just so I got a nice tight tension on the thread here so it's not too loose. And I'm going to go through the second bead in the line. I'm going to hold my work as I pull very carefully. And what's going to happen is that bead will sit right next to the top bead. You might have to manipulate it a little bit because the first couple of stitches are very tricky to get right. And it's just, it's just a little bit of a fumbly mess in the beginning, but it works out eventually. So there we have it. We have the two beads sitting right next to each other. I'm going to take another bead and I'm going to skip this bead and I'm going to go down the next one. And there we go. Hold on to your work as you pull your thread. Let the bead pop in place. And there we have another bead sitting side by side like little soldiers. And we're going to do that again. So basically the art of peyote stitch is bead one, skip one. So here we are. Here's our next bead in line. We don't want to go through that one. We want to go the one after that one. So we're going to go through this one right here. Hold your work. Gently pull. Give it a little tug. And you see how these delicas pop into place? And they look nice and uniform. That's exactly what we want. Like so. I'm going to pick up one more bead. I'm going to skip this one and go down the next one. Okay, like so. Pull very slowly. Let it slide into place. Okay, so now we got one more to go. Pick up one bead, skip this one, go down the next one. That's the last bead in our row. Okay, and there we have actually done, let's see, it's a little wiggly there, let's give it a little tug. Make sure all your beads are uniformed. Ready to do the next row. Looks pretty good to me. So now really you have done, like I said, the first, when we strung on the beads, that was 2 rows of peyote. We just added 1 row. So then we're now on the 3rd row. And you know this because when you count diagonally to know how many rows that you have done. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So I know that's 3 rows of peyote. Okay, so now we're going to add our 4th one. Now, as you know, your thread's coming down out of the bottom bead now. So instead of working down, we're going to be working up. And it gets a little simpler now because you have beads that are recessed and beads that are sticking out. These are what we call the sticking out ones. So you're going to go through, now you don't have to worry about, going through every other bead because you'll know which bead you're going to go out of because, come through because you're going to go through every bead that's sticking out. So this row should be very, very simple. So all we have to do, take one bead, go through the first bead that's sticking out, like so. Pull your thread carefully, hold your work. Okay, and that's sticking up just perfectly. See, it's adding another row. Take another bead, go through this one that's sticking out. Okay, give it a pull. And then these beads will just sit nicely in between those recessed beads. Oh, take one bead, go through the one that's sticking out. Now in the beginning it's a little fiddly because it's so small to hold on to. But once you add a few more rows, it gets easier as you go along. Okay, one bead through the sticking out bead and pull. Okay, and this will be our last one for this row. Bead through the last sticking out bead right here. Okay, give it a pull. And there we go. So when I count this to see how many rows I have on now, count on the diagonal. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how many rows we have done. So now we're starting row 5. I'll do a couple more rows with you. and you'll see how this stitch develops. Take a bead, go down the sticking out bead in this direction. Now we're working towards ourselves. So pull. And you'll find as you get a little bit more experience with this stitch, it's kind of great because these delicas, they just slot right in. It's quite satisfying to feel that little snap into place. And you'll hear it and you'll feel like, oh, that's right, that feels right. And before you know it, you're full steam ahead and you've made like 20 rows, because from now on it's easy. You just look for those beads that are sticking out, and that's the ones that you go through. So really initially it's just that first couple of rows that get you started is the most trickiest. But once you get that down, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. I'll do one more row with you. We're coming out of the bottom. Pick up a bead, go up through the sticking out bead. Okay, another bead. See that pop into place? And you can use this stitch in a lot of different ways. It's a nice flat stitch. So if you're doing any kind of flat work, it's really pretty. It's great for making chains and rings. Anything that's flat is really pretty. Okay, so that's another row. How many rows have I done? Well, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see, try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I've done 6. All right, so we've done 6 rows. Coming down. And we're going to go down this one. See, you can go faster as you get more experienced and more comfortable with knowing where to put your beads. So I'm just going through every single sticking out bead. There we go. As you can see, it's very pretty. And that's how you do peyote stitch. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to press the subscribe button, and so you can see all my videos and tutorials on my channel. And if you don't want to miss a video, a new one that comes up, then please consider clicking on the bell so you can be notified of any new videos that come up along in the future. Thanks for watching. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and I have an Etsy shop and a website, hugsbeads.com. If you wish to see any of those links, please go to the description box. They're all there. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.